with that, let me turn it over to David to kick things off. David.
Thanks. Welcome, everybody. It's great to see so many people in person that I've seen mainly on Zoom, and to provide this opportunity to come to New York. Before I start, I want to thank Yuka and Mike Yang and Tina. Where are you, Tina? Tina back there, for arranging all the great effort of the Datadog to the keynote. I work at Datadog. I know about a lot of the things that are going to be said, but I walk away from something like that really impressed by Datadog. When you think about the product velocity that's demonstrated, and the focus on client problems as evidenced by a lot of who was up on stage and the clients coming up, and then who was speaking, the range of people that participated, it really makes me appreciate, and I hope it'll come out clearly through this conversation, that Datadog is a very product-focused, innovative company that is constantly innovating. Before we get to the demos, where you guys can see a little more about that from some of our product leaders, I want to spend a little time talking about Datadog and the topic of how our platform helps our customers, a little bit about what we think about our long-term growth opportunities and how we're executing about that. So, a second, let me catch up here. So now I'm caught up. So sort of to start out, I want to start out by what are the problems that we are trying to solve for our clients, and how are we doing that? As backdrop to that, all of this is by two interrelated, very long-term secular trends that we think are still in very early stages. Digital transformation and cloud migration, and they're related. So what is digital transformation? Digital transformation is what we are seeing in the world of all companies becoming software companies. Companies investing at higher scale or impact in software applications that are enabling them to interact with their customers internally, the supply chain, employees, et cetera, in a very proactive way. And then cloud migration, the movement of IT workloads from legacy IT to the cloud. And why are these related? The reason is that this cloud migration, because of the benefits of going to the cloud, because of the scaling benefits, the technology benefits, the ability to change business plan, enables this digital transformation. And those two trends are behind, I'm sure many of you know that are following this industry, are behind what is driving Datadog and their growth and their product innovation. And so to dive in a little bit farther, and those of you that have been with us on the whole journey know that this slide, you've seen it before. And it's one of Ali's favorite slides. It's what he's used to explain why Datadog at this time. And the reason is that this combination of digital transformation and cloud, which is because of the agility and flexibility, also means that there's a lot more complexity introduced into the IT environment. And because of that, the legacy tools and the siloed tools have proven to be ineffective, and thus Datadog. So in order to monitor what's going on in modern DevOps environments, there's a huge growth of complexity, of number of pieces of hardware and services, the atomization of that in containers. And so in order to do that, clients have found, and Datadog's mission has been to break down those silos and make this complexity more digestible. You saw that in the keynotes, and more able to be monitored and have more speed and flexibility in deploying. And that's sort of Datadog. Datadog was birthed and is relentlessly innovating to help solve the complexity that clients experience in this environment. And it's on a number of different levels. First of all, at the very core, in the middle here, you see our products, our SKUs. And Datadog is a platform that is able to seamlessly integrate metrics that come from the infrastructure, traces that come from the software, and logs to analyze how everything's working and put it in one platform. In addition, and this has gone up, I think when we went public, it was 300 or 400, over 600 data sources that we're integrating with in order to bring all that information into the platform and allow clients to analyze problems with as much of the data. What they want is to see everything that could be affecting the software in the system. So all of that is enabled by a platform. And we talked, there was a little bit of a discussion, a piece of the keynote about Watchdog and a piece of the platform and workflows. These are elements of how it all is knitted together to provide utility for our clients. And all of that delivered in a single pane of glass, two, in a very ubiquitous and democratized way, which breaks down silos to lots of constituencies, to developers who build the code, to people in IT ops who put that code into production, to security engineers, to support groups that help maintain that, and then all the way into the business owners who rely on the Datadog metrics to see what's going on in the business. This is real-time data on what's going on in clients using products, and it increasingly has been used by business folks. So that is the sort of the crux of the Datadog platform. Here is the platform that's divided more into its products. It is a unified end-to-end platform that can be used seamlessly with an UI that contains a lot of data, a lot of things prepackaged. Earlier today, there was a discussion of power packs. How can clients just go in, point and click, and get very different metrics and charts, et cetera? And all of that so that it is simple but not simplistic. And these capabilities are offered together. We have it here: infrastructure, application monitoring, digital experience monitoring, log security, and the developer suite. And all of our SKUs that we talk about fit underneath of this. On top of that, they operate on a platform that increasingly is enabled with Watchdog AI, we talked about, and then shared platforms, collaboration, dashboards, workflow. And a number of these are things that were announced today in the keynote and that we're developing. And this is how the whole platform fits together. In looking at the platform, we talked a little bit over the years about the expansion of the platform. Today, there will be a whole section on security, so I'm not going to go over it in great detail right now. But I will say that what we're talking about with security is cloud security, the monitoring, the security of native cloud applications. It isn't endpoint security, and we're not entering the firewall market competing with the legacy. So I'll leave it at that, and Pierre and team will go over that later. So in terms of sort of summing it, sorry, I have to go forward. So that's sort of the platform. And some of you have been following this for some time. Others are newer to the story, so we want to go over it. So with that as a groundwork, what are the growth opportunities and investments we're making, and how do we decide on those? So starting on a summary of this, there's some real growth drivers that are persistent and long-term that we are investing against. First of all, and I talked about the secular tailwind of digital transformation and cloud migration. One of the big growth drivers is that growth itself, and Datadog's increased penetration in providing a platform to monitor those services that are delivered. In addition, we are relentlessly investing in expanding the products and use cases. We'll go over that in the observability space and expanding into new markets beyond observability, some of which are security, CI/CD, in addition to some things that you can see on the platform in terms of alerting and workflows, et cetera, expanding those use cases. So it's first to go into the long-term drivers. And I think we said this is a big market and a rapidly growing market. For this portion of the presentation, we're going to be using publicly available metrics that, in this case, are put out by Gartner. And you can see that the forecast of global cloud spend is expected to grow to over $1 trillion. And it's been growing for a while, and the growth rate continues to be very strong. Like we said, we believe we're still in the early days. But if you look at the line on top of that, you'll see that we still have only 11% of IT spend on the cloud. So low penetration, and we think lots of room to grow. Then observability itself, also a very large market. This is also Gartner information, and we put that in our financial disclosures. We believe that the observability market today is $41 billion, growing to $62 billion in 2026. So large and growing. And we think we're focused on the vast majority of this market, and notably the higher growing portion of the market, which is the DevOps and cloud part of the market. So very big TAM that we're investing against. And so at the very core of it, what you saw today is not possible unless we are investing very rapidly in innovation across the market. And one of the metrics we look at is our growth of our non-GAAP R&D expenses, both in total and as a percentage of revenues. And you see from this chart that over many years, we've been maintaining and growing this investment. And this enables the kind of innovation that you saw today. Now, it's our efficient business model in terms of our frictionless go-to-market, the way the platform's designed, et cetera, that creates the efficiency that enables us to invest at this pace and be a leader in terms of the amount of R&D that we are spending and investing and the growth rate, yet still be a profitable cash flow generative business. In terms of how we're investing, we're really doing it, as I mentioned before, everything I showed before was about our organic investment. But we also have complemented that and accelerated, in fact, our investment. If you look at this slide, I think this is the first time we put it on one slide, how we've been investing inorganically over time. This shows 9 acquisitions that we've made over the last 5 years, 6 years. And I want to highlight the rapid pace here, but also what we're doing. We are not acquiring companies to run as standalone platforms. One of the key competitive advantages of Datadog is that it's on a common platform. But what we are doing is largely acquiring talented R&D teams. And what you'll find is that we spend the first 12 to 18 months replatforming, putting this technology on our platform in order to continue to deliver that integrated experience. So you start to see revenues being recognized in that period of after the 18 months, 12 to 18 months. And so we've done that very successfully in the past. And the ones that are newer the 2022, we're still in the process. The co-screens, the HDiv, the secrets, et cetera. We're still in the process of putting them on our platform. Finally, I want to mention one of the great competitive advantages that have come from our acquisitions is we've been able to partner and bring into Datadog fantastic entrepreneurs. And they stayed with us. They've been part of the vision. They've been part of the scaling of the Datadog R&D organization and have become very important leaders. Many of these acquisitions have turned into very large businesses at Datadog. And for example, Renaud Boutet, he was acquired as part of the Logmatic acquisition in 2017. And today, he's the head of our product organization in APM and logs. And you will meet later Pierre, who, if you look in, I guess it's 2021, was part of the acquisition of Screen in AppSec, and he today runs on the product side our cloud security business. So this has been a very important way in which we've expanded the talent base. Those two things together, the organic investment and the bringing in through acqui-hires of talent and capabilities, and you've seen this chart over the years, has really enabled us to go from in 2010, 2012, starting out as an infrastructure monitoring company and really expanding into application, log, digital experience, et cetera. All of these are individual products, all knitted together as part of one platform, used by everyone, deployed by everywhere. And this history of innovation has kept up over many years. This is a little more of a graph. When you step back, you see the pace. The pace has actually picked up as we have been announcing more and more functionality. The platform has expanded, and you see that every year we've been able to increase the velocity of product introductions. Are we effective at this? This is a slide which we've shown that looks at a metric of how clients are using the platform. Are they buying bigger parts of the platform? And the answer is a resounding yes. In starting out from the infrastructure monitoring, now almost 80% of our customers are using 2 or more products, 37% using 4 or more products, and 14% using 6 or more. And what that tells us is that we have been effective in listening to customers, increasing the functionality, and getting adoption. But it also tells us that we have a lot of opportunity. If you look at what's happened and you see the number of customers that are using the full platform, there's a lot of cycles to go through of our existing customers landing with more products and those that we have using more products. And so sort of finally, I want to reflect back where I started on the keynote and on Dash and looking at, just to sum it up for everybody, everything that was announced today, which has really been what we've been working on the last few quarters. And it is quite a long list and comprehensive and across a number of ways that we feel that we are providing more value to clients. So that's sort of what I wanted to talk about. And now I'm going to have Yuka come up to the stage. Ali's going to come to the stage, and we're going to basically open it up for questions to both everyone in the room and online. Yuka.
Okay, great. Okay, so we're going to do a bit of Q&A now. CEO and co-founder Olivier Pomel. You've just heard from David. As a reminder, we are in quiet period. We will be announcing our next earnings on November the 3rd. So no questions, please, about near-term financials, near-term demand environment, guidance, what have you. We will address that in a couple of weeks. So we are going to take questions from our in-person audience. My colleague David Fisher has a handheld mic, so I'm going to ask you to raise your hands to ask a question. For those of you who are joining us on the webcast, there's a chat window there for you to input questions, and we will take questions from the webcast audience as well. So we will start with Sanjit. Please go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, thank you for taking the question, Sanjit Singh, Morgan Stanley. I was watching the keynote, Olivier and David, and once again, like past years, really impressed with the pace of product innovation. But this year is like a little bit of a different environment. And so I was looking at the keynote through 2 perspectives. Your users, right, who are probably giddy at some of the stuff that you announced. And then maybe the managers and the business leaders who look at this and say, wow, this is a lot of stuff. How do I manage this all? How do I have to potentially pay for this all? And so if you look at all the stuff that you're innovating on, and you look at what the business is trying to solve for in this new regime around, I want to do things cheaper, faster, more secure. Do you feel like that the pace of innovation is way ahead of like your customers' ability to consume and ultimately monetize, just with, with all the announcements that we've seen today?
Thanks. Can you hear me, by the way? Is there? No.
You on? Is it on? Okay. Yeah.
All right. So here's the thing. In general, the problem space is still growing faster than the solution that we're providing going after that. So whatever we're shipping corresponds to real problems our customers have, and it's valuable for them to use our products to solve those problems. So that's generally what the order in which those things come. Now, you saw a few themes in the keynote this morning. One overarching theme is that we are covering a broader set of use cases from what used to be separate disparate categories And as part of that, part of the value we provide to our customers is we help them consolidate what used to be different areas of spend, different tools they need to manage, different things they need to integrate themselves. They had to turn themselves into system integrators for that. We help them consolidate all that under one roof, which is more efficient for them. And it's something that in times of crisis or, perceived crisis or field crisis, I think different parts of the world are in different stages when it comes to that. This is something that customers want and ask for. Another theme you saw is that we also are providing more products for our customers to help improve their own efficiencies. So we talked this morning about cloud cost management, which is something that customers all need pretty much. You've seen also the intelligent test runner, which helps improve developer productivity, helps spend less CPU cycle time on running useless tests. And there's more initiatives of the sort that we're not even showing in the keynotes, and things around profiling and helping customers improve the performance of their, and get insights from Watchdog to improve the performance of their programs. So these are all things that help our customers get more efficient. At the end of the day, what we want customers to come out of with is to be in a situation where what they pay to Datadog has an extremely high yield when it comes to the efficiency of their cloud infrastructure and the efficiency of their engineering teams, both of which are by far the largest amount of spend for them.
Next question from the audience. Great, Brent.
Hi, it's Brent Thill with Jefferies. Olivier, in 3 years, what are your aspirations in security? What are the milestones you're saying? What do you look like in security? And David, can I ask a quick follow-up? I know we're not talking about the quarter. I'll abide by Yuka's view, but assuming the macro headwinds continue to get stiffer, what steps are you putting in, if anything, to cut through what we're starting to see overall in the overall environment? Many software companies are seeing things slow. What's your action plan? How are you thinking through this over the next year?
Want to go first?
Yeah, so I'll start with security. So look, the problem is gigantic security. It's a problem that's been running away from our customers for a very long time. They all have bought generation after generation of security tools, and still the problem is getting bigger and it's not getting solved any faster. So our ambition is to solve that problem for them, at least when it comes to cloud security, securing their homegrown applications, as well as the infrastructure they're running on and all the processes that's around that. Our strategy for that is to lean on the largest teams, and we'll hear more from Prashant a little bit later on that topic, but we're leaning on the largest teams, which are developers and the DevOps engineers, to really extend the yield of the security specialists that tend to be few and far between in enterprises. So we know we have a long way to go for that. There's a lot more product we're building internally. There's a lot more we know we need to build. But what you saw this morning is that we are progressing very fast in terms of giving new capabilities to our customers. We today have a very good offering for the infrastructure side, which is cloud security management, and a very good offering for the application side. We both talked about this morning. We'll talk about it again in a bit. And we're also getting to a point where we go past just observing what's going on, but we also help our customers take action directly. So again, we still have a long roadmap, but we think we are in a unique position to solve this problem, and that's why you see the investment you see there. David?
Yeah, as far as choppiness in the market and what might come ahead, I think number one, we're really focused on the long term. As we talked about, we think there's a very long, huge opportunity here. So there might be choppiness along the way, but we really believe in the long-term opportunity. In terms of how we might be affected, things we look at are, for instance, our gross retentions, and to see how sticky we are, and to see that when cost cutting does happen, it doesn't appear, based on what we've said so far as of our earnings call, that it affects keeping Datadog, because if you're delivering products to clients, you need to monitor them, and you need to have something like a Datadog. So the stickiness. And then as far as Ali mentioned also, we don't know, it's too early in the cycle, but there are some efficiencies in automation and bringing tools together that complement the adoption of a platform like Datadog. But of course, there may be choppiness, and there's a couple things I would note. One is we've always been a company that's lived within our means. We've invested in a very methodical way, a very consistent way, that isn't boom or bust. And that's how we structured the investments in the company, and we intend to continue given the long-term opportunity. And then because of our efficiencies that we have in the model we talked about, the go-to-market, et cetera, that enables us to make very strong investments in R&D on a continuous basis, and not have some of the problems that other companies may have who don't have that particular cost structure, or maybe the history of investing very rapidly but living within their means.
I'll just emphasize that with 2 points. The one which is, should remember that we only consume a bit more than $20 million from inception of Datadog to going public. So that's how we run things. Mm-hmm. And as of today, we're also hiring as many engineers as we can, as quickly as we can, so we can keep this level of investment and make those developer charts that David showed a little bit earlier, grow a little bit steeper. So we know we're still only scratching the surface of the problem space we're faced, and we're in full investment mode on that side.
I'm going to read off the question from one of our webcast participants. It's Muji from Hypergrowth. Please talk about the opportunity with workflows. You seem to be moving into workflow automation akin to Monday or Asana, but more for infrastructure.
Yeah, so this is also one of the themes from this morning keynote. It's really about taking action. And it's fairly new for Datadog. We've been focused on observing and monitoring initially, and now we're starting to close the loop and add the parts where we respond. Whether that's running workflows or running tests more efficiently, or blocking users from a security perspective. So we're closing back the loop here. On the workflow automation product, the two use cases we have in mind right now are DevOps and security automation. And this is what we started with. In the demo this morning, we showed a DevOps use case. Then we had a customer show a security use case. These are the two we're investing in. We're not in it to replace the Mondays and the more general purpose workflow automation products. We're not in here to automate customers, front office or whatever they have that is automating their customer data. That's not what we're doing. We're here to work on use cases that are grounded in our data and that are also most relevant to developers, DevOps engineers, and security engineers. And those present some very specific constraints, because they deal with sensitive data, very large data volumes. They have to run in specific environments. So some of them are going to run server-side in the cloud. Some of them are going to run on-premise in secure environments. So there are a number of problems that are very specific to those workflows that we deal with our workflow products.
Okay, an in-person question. Can you raise your hands, please? Okay, great.
Hi, Sterling Audi, MoffettNathanson, SVB. So you had the slide with all the new product and functionality that you announced today. Can you give us a sense what ones of those are going to be included in what customers are already paying, and what ones are going to be incremental opportunities in terms of revenue generation?
Well, it's hard to give a general answer to that, So I would say it's about half and half, new capabilities and new products from what we have announced. And some of them are in beta, and we haven't finalized packaging for those yet, but we know they're going to be separate SKUs in some form. But and some of those some of those are in beta, we also started charging from already, some customers for them already, as we develop those products hand in hand with customers.
Another in-person, please raise your hands.
Thanks, Andy Nowinski with Wells Fargo. Last quarter, you talked about cloud migration slowing and the impact on Datadog, and then today you launched a dozen or so new products, some of which are likely new revenue streams, including some of the shift left modules, the workflows, and cloud cost management. So it seems like Datadog's growth is becoming more and more decoupled from cloud migrations. Regardless of the pace of those migrations, I'm just wondering how you're thinking about that decoupling.
Yeah, I just want to make sure and clarify. We didn't talk about slowing cloud migrations last time on earnings. What we talked about was a cost view more concentrated than previous quarters on optimizing what was being used. And we said a couple sectors had been affected, like consumer discretionary, but just want to clear up in advance that we didn't talk about slowing cloud migration.
In fact, we actually see exactly the same demand from customers in terms of moving to the cloud. If not more demand, in terms of starting new migrations and getting into the cloud environments. But we did see the thing that we talked about slowing at certain levels, which David alluded to, was on certain volume-based products such as no logs, for example, where there can be some optimization without actually changing your workloads.
All right, I'm going to read off another question from our webcast participants. This is from Fatima Bilani from Citi. The portfolio expansion is leaning more and more towards shifting left. How are you aiming to solve for monetization obstacles common with developer tools, given end-user fickleness?
So we're shifting left because there are many more developers than there are ops engineers, and there are many more engineers than there are security engineers, and that's the center of gravity of most enterprises. We already have a lot of those developers' time and attention because they use us to deal with their production environment. We're trying to integrate what they do with us in production environment further upstream with how they're coding, how they're testing, and how they're shipping their code. So we're going up in that order pretty much. We start with production, then we go up to deployment, then we go up to testing, and that's what you've seen today. In terms of fickleness, I think it depends what you do. If you look at developer environments and editors, yes, this is very fickle, and this is not necessarily a market that we're interested in. Developers are going to use many different kinds of those, and it's a matter of personal preference, and that's fine, but there's also no value in providing a unified platform there. For everything that has to do with integrating with other developers' work across the enterprise, there's value in having a platform, and that's what we're shipping there.
Okay, let's take one more question for this Q&A session. Okay, great.
Yeah, great. Thanks. Gray Powell with BTIG. So a question on the security side and just your go-to-market there. So historically, your sales and marketing, it's just been incredibly efficient. But going after different buying centers, it's often been difficult for other software companies. So what kind of incremental investments should we expect you to make in sales and marketing as you try to more deeply penetrate the security space? And are there any material changes that we should expect as you go after that market?
So it's possible there will be changes. We just don't know yet. We're trying a few different things, but right now the vast majority of our security customers and usage are acquired in a bottom-up fashion that is very similar to the way the rest of the Datadog platform has been adopted. We're not completely married to that approach. We know we might need to do a few different things. We've tried a few different. We're trying a few more, but there's nothing that we're doing of significant scale there yet. So nothing to announce.
Okay, great. We are going to stop this Q&A session. Don't worry, there's going to be two more. So I'm going to invite Ollie and David to leave the stage. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
Great. Our observability platform and products, and we really just want to show you the platform in action. And to do that, joining me on stage is Omri Sass, our group product manager for application performance management. Omri.
Thanks, Yuka. Can everyone hear me okay? Is the mic working? My name is Omri, and I'm one of the product managers who work on our APM suite. I've been with Datadog for about 3.5 years, and throughout that time, I've focused mostly on APM. And in doing that, I've gotten exposure to kind of the broader suite of observability tools. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. We're going to have 3 different sections. In the first one, we're going to talk about how we take an issue. However we detect it, today we'll talk about a user complaint and how our users take that and turn it into an action they can take to resolve. After that, we'll talk a bit about where most of the Datadog users spend the bulk of their time. Our most popular features are dashboards. And then finally, we'll talk a bit about how AI and ML can help troubleshoot faster. So for the first part of the demo, I want to introduce two kind of concepts that we have. The first one is monitoring for front-end applications. These would be web applications or mobile applications. In the future, we might talk about things like, smart TVs. And that's where users actually engage with their applications. That's monitored with our digital experience monitoring suite. Specifically today, we're going to talk about RUM, or real user monitoring. That in Datadog is seamlessly integrated with the monitoring tools for our backend. So application performance monitoring, or APM, which gives us the application view, and infrastructure monitoring that gives us the health of the actual machines or containers or anything like that folks rent off of the cloud providers. So we'll see how APM, infrastructure monitoring, and real user monitoring all play in tandem. And across both front end and back end, we'll see how log management helps our users identify root causes. So with that, I think we need to switch, Mike. I want to start by introducing CouchCache. CouchCache is a bit of a fake e-commerce application that we have. It's available on a website called shopist.io. If you go to that website, you'll be able to see exactly what I'm seeing here. This looks and behaves like any old e-commerce. In this case, it's a furniture store where we're able to do things like identify a couch that we might be interested in, add it to our cart, try to check out. We can even apply a discount code for $100 off and try to check out. Now, obviously, our expertise is in software. So if you try to do this on our website, we're not going to ship a sofa to your location. But let's see what happens when we try to check out. So in this case, we get an error. Something went wrong, and it's not very informative. Usually what happens in these cases is the first thing that happens is that users try to click all over the place, and then they click the return to page, and they try to figure out how to reach out to support. Sometimes there would be a little chat icon that allows you to chat directly with someone, or it would be an email exchange. And I don't know when's the last time anyone here had to go through that process. I tried to book travel recently, and when I was trying to type in the 3-letter security code for my credit card, it actually led me to a blank page. So I reached out to the support. They asked me for a step-by-step reproduction of what I did. So in the industry, we call that repro steps. I'm familiar with it. No big deal. Gave them that. Then they started asking me for screenshots, and that was slightly odd because I told them, hey, I got a blank page. And again, they were very adamant that they wanted a screenshot. I gave them a screenshot of a blank page. It was a fairly frustrating ordeal, and it's very indicative of a lot of exchanges that folks have with kind of support. There's a lot of back and forth. And with that in mind, I want to jump into Datadog. And we'll talk about what do support personnel and then engineers do in Datadog to make sure that we don't have any of that friction. This is real user monitoring. I already mentioned that on the slide. This is an entry point for a lot of investigations and a lot of our users. And you'll see at the top, I have this search bar where I'm able to type in anything that I might be looking for. This is the same experience that we have throughout Datadog. It's a very consistent user experience. So anyone who lands on real user monitoring or on log management or in APM gets the same experience. It's always familiar. They can just jump in and look for anything that they might care about. In this case, for example, in an exchange with support, we can look for an individual user. Alternatively, in this case, I want to make sure that we look at the entire list. Every one of the rows that we have here is a user session. And if we click into any one of them, we'll be able to see a lot of information about that session. Where is this user from? How many pages have they visited? How many buttons have they clicked? We have this little frowny face that says that this user was frustrated. We'll talk a bit about what that means in a second. But underneath all of these, we have the timeline. We know exactly when a user loaded a page, when they clicked anywhere, navigated to another page, and so on and so forth. So from our perspective, if we're trying to provide a good service, we don't need to ask our users when they reach out to support for a step-by-step reproduction. We actually have slightly more than that. We have the ability to replay their session. Session replay is a pixel-perfect video reproduction of the user's interaction with our website. If I click on play, what we'll see is the exact actions that a user has taken through the same application. I'm not going to do all of this, but we have that capability. So we no longer need to ask users for every individual step. We can just keep track of it. On the right hand, I have that timeline again that lets me center on exactly what I'm looking for instead of just following the video. In this case, I can see that we have that frowny face that says that a user hit an error. This is a frustration signal, and that's something that Datadog identifies on behalf of our users, so they don't even need to wait for a complaint. Remember how I clicked around on the error button, or the error message? When that happens, Datadog is able to identify a rage click, or in what we're looking at here, an error click. And what our users do in these cases is they go to the page load that happened right before, and they click into the details. And here we have all sorts of information that's relevant to identify what was going on in the front end. For example, we have what we call core web vitals. These are the same things that our users use to identify how long it takes for a page to load, right? And these have an impact on user experience or SEO, but I don't want to spend too much time here. This part of the experience is tailored for front-end engineers who are trying to troubleshoot their front end. But what I want to do is I want to show you how easy it is to pivot into monitoring for your backend. And we do that with traces. Traces are part of our APM solution. And if I click on View Trace in APM, we're going to get exactly the same view on a bigger screen, but we've also pivoted from real user monitoring into APM. It looks and feels exactly the same. So it doesn't matter where we start, what type of user we are. We always get one very consistent user experience. Now, putting on my APM hat, this is what we call the flame graph. The flame graph is a visual representation of how a request propagates through a stack. I'm not going to spend too much time on that, but I will say it has some very clear visual signals for backend engineers. What they do is they look at the bottom part of the graph that has an error associated with it, right? What is the lowest part that has a red marking on it. That's usually the root cause of whatever issue is happening that then gets propagated upwards, all the way up to browser.request. This is the user who's experiencing our error, right? So we can see all of the information from real user monitoring and all of the information from APM in one place, and we have very quick to use troubleshooting tools. Here, I'm able to see information about this particular part of the request. In this case, I know what service on the back end it's coming from, and I have a lot of associated metadata generated in APM. But I also have a seamless integration with infrastructure monitoring, where I'm able to see what machine is actually running the service, what is its overall health, things like CPU, load, memory, or disk usage, the same types of metrics that you might think about when you're looking at your own laptop as it's slowing down. In addition to that, we also bring in every individual log line that was generated during this request. This is a very nifty capability because if you think about the world before Datadog, this used to require multiple tools and several minutes of querying just to identify these individual logs. And then finally, I want to make sure that I mention code hotspots. Code hotspots are how we represent continuous profiler in APM. And I think Ollie mentioned it earlier in the Q&A, where he said that the tools that we generate are here to make sure that users can optimize every part of their technological stack. And what we're looking at here, again, I won't show you all of the nitty gritty. Continuous profiler lets us see exactly what line of code is slowing the system down. And for an experienced backend engineer, this thing on the left, synchronization for 18 seconds, tells us that we have what's known as a deadlock. A deadlock is when two lines of code prevent each other from operating. And what tends to happen in that case is an error after a while. So we now know what we need to do. We should probably go into continuous profiler and figure out what lines of code we need to fix. Or alternatively, we should check if this is a new piece of code. If it's a new piece of code, what we should do is revert back to the last known good state, the most common thing that happens for a faulty code deployment. Datadog has tools that kind of help us figure out exactly what to do. It gets very technical very quickly. I don't want to spend too much time on it. But I do want everyone here to leave this part of the demo realizing that Datadog offers our users the ability to seamlessly navigate through Datadog, through all of our products, regardless of what they're looking for. So think back to what we just did. We saw how a user fails to do a checkout. This is a business critical operation, right? We are losing money by not allowing a user to check out with the $1,200 couch. And we figured out the root cause of it. We can revert back a faulty code deploy within minutes. So if we go back to the presentation for a minute, there we go. We'll take a look at the slide that David talked about a bit earlier that has all of the various products from Datadog. And clearly, I'm not going to go through every one of those. There are quite a few of them today. But I want to make sure that we focus not only on the individual products, right? We talked about real user monitoring, infrastructure monitoring, log management, APM, and continuous profiler. I want to take a moment to focus on the platform. What are the things that are shared across all of Datadog's products that all users can access and make sure that they have the best experience tailored to their own needs? And with that, we're going to talk about two main components. The first one are dashboards, which is, like I said, by far the most popular part of Datadog. It's where most of our users spend most of their time. And then we'll talk a bit about Watchdog, which is our AI ML engine, and how AI can help troubleshoot faster. So if we go back to the demo, there we go. Here we have an example for a dashboard. This is one of the dashboards that we created for the backend and business operation of the same e-commerce application that I showed you earlier. So for Couch Cache, we have information like its overall uptime, right? This is what we call an SLO, a service level objective. This makes sure that we have a big green or red number that tells us whether we should focus on feature work or alternatively on reliability. If the situation wasn't as optimistic as it is here, where we have 100% in the past 7 days and 100% in the past 30 days, if it would have been lower than our targets, we probably would have diverted our engineering capacity towards reliability. We've done what's known as a reliability sprint, or even a quarter of just focusing on our ability to scale our operation. Under that, we have information like active monitors. Do we have anything that's currently alerting? Do we need to take immediate action? And under that, we start to bring in additional business KPIs. And this speaks to the power of Datadog's platform, where we show you data not only from our own products, right? All of the data that we saw in APM or infrastructure monitoring. We also bring in data from the 600 and more integrations that I think Yuka mentioned earlier. And we bring in, or we allow our users to bring in custom metrics, anything that they might care about to help run their business. In this case, we see the overall throughput, average request per second, alongside a business metric like the overall furniture sales. And if we dig deeper into those, we'll be able to see how something like an increase in latency for an application is correlated with a decrease in conversion on our checkouts. So we can quantify exactly what happens when user experience degrades or improves. So our users are able to do all of that, and they can very easily create any of these nifty visualizations based on any type of data. Not only the over time metrics or big numbers that we've been looking at. From APM, we have information like the service map that allows us to identify the status or health of downstream dependencies for our services. Or if we scroll down, we'll be able to see things like our host map. What is the health of every machine that underlies our services? And we can also do things like leverage non-deterministic functions like forecasting to try and look into the future and identify the expected behavior of all sorts of metrics. Everything that we see here on the dashboard is also available as a metric, so users don't even have to go into Datadog. They can get alerted if any metric goes into a negative state. We're also able to bring in individual log lines here, or even use RUM data to identify what's going on with our user experience with something like the funnel analysis that helps us run analytics queries and identify where we might have attrition in our checkout process. And we can dig into anything here and jump from the funnel through RUM into individual sessions. So this dashboard is wonderful, but it was also built by folks here at Datadog. And clearly we know how to build the nice looking dashboards. I want to make sure that everyone here understands how easy this is to build for any user, as it takes just a second of dragging one of these widgets into the dashboard in order to create it. The actual creation flow is super simple, but we want to take it a step further. And I think we heard some questions earlier about Power Packs. Power packs are how we enable power users to share knowledge with their constituents, right? This allows us to say, hey, every time someone rolls out a new microservice, you really should have this service overview set of widgets. And that allows us to say, okay, there are 7 or 10 or 17 widgets that you should always look at when you roll out a new service. And that's unique to our organization. Hey, Stephanie just made this Power Pack for us, and we'll be able to drag that out completely. And then finally, I want to make sure that I very briefly mention apps. We now have a third-party marketplace that allows companies like Rookout or PagerDuty or LaunchDarkly to create widgets within Datadog, allowing their users to leverage their own data with their own user experience alongside Datadog's data where most of their users are already. So those are dashboards. This is where most of our users spend their time. And that leads me to one last bit of this demo. Watchdog. And I've mentioned it a couple of times. This is where we do not only traditional types of monitoring, we also leverage non-deterministic algorithms, AI or ML if you'd like to go down that route. And that lets us do quite a few things. I'm going to focus on one here, and that is Watchdog alerts. These are alerts that we're able to generate with no additional setup for our users and no a priori knowledge. No one needs to know what the baseline behavior of a service is. Watchdog establishes that on our users' behalf by looking at all of the billions of data points that we process from metrics and from logs. Then identifies any anomalies in key metrics, right? So we're able to say things like latency is up on an individual endpoint for an individual service, and that's still ongoing. It might be relevant. We also try to make sure that we never create noise for our users. So for every one of these cases, we correlate them to anything that might be impacted by the same anomaly, right? So we're able to say multiple services have a cascading failure, right? We saw that in Flame Graph, where a failure went up the Flame Graph. The same thing is represented here, where a single alert represents a failure that happens across multiple places. And then Watchdog does something even cooler than that. It tries to identify the root cause of an issue. In cases where we have this pink banner for root cause analysis or RCA, we're able to identify exactly what's happening down to an action that we can take, right? So in this case, we know that a new deployment on some address service is the thing that resolves user addresses to make sure that we know where to send the SOFA, right? If you've ever typed in an address and it says, hey, want to use the suggested address? This is what that service does. Someone rolled out a new type of code or a new deployment there. That led to errors and latency in one place, which themselves led to a failure in 4 other places. But through correlating real user monitoring data, we're able to say not only what services are impacted, but who are the individual users that are impacted. And we can see that 163 users are impacted by this bad code deployment, and they're impacted on 2 separate views, on the checkout page and in the cart. This should be enough for a user to go and remediate. At this point, a user knows that they need to go to the address service and revert that code deploy. And then offline, they can figure out what part of the code caused it. But first things first, go back to the last known good state. If users are not content with that, they want to see additional evidence, they have everything that they need here. When was this code released? Was there a remediation that already happened? What are the critical failures that happened, from which we can always jump into APM or log management or infrastructure, and who was impacted? So with that, I want to make sure that we kind of wrap things up. In this part of the demo, what we looked at is what does a dashboard look like and what are the data sources that our users are able to bring into their dashboard where they can do things like correlate the health of their business with things like revenue or analytics data with everything that's happening on their front end or back end, the more technical things or the operational data. And then we look at Watchdog and how AI and ML can troubleshoot or help our users troubleshoot faster. With that, I think I'm done.
Okay. All right, we're going to go to our second Q&A session. This one is to, and it's maybe especially this time, we will report on November the 3rd. We're not talking about near-term financials, near-term demand. We'd love to focus on product and platform in this Q&A. And joining Omri is our president, Amit Agarwal. And so we'll start with questions from the in-person audience. Can you please raise your hands and Fisher will come to you with a mic. Anybody with questions? Great.
Steve Koenig from SMBC. Thanks for the demo and the white box. You know, we were talking earlier about where you were seeing short-term choppiness, and it had to do with some of your use cases outside of your core. But I'm also wondering, and this is both a short-term and a longer-term question, you know, maybe some of your biggest competition is customers try to do things on the cheap themselves with open source, with hyperscaler tooling. What things from a product perspective that you can do to counter that competition? And maybe this is related, and you know, to what extent do you think you'll be leading less with infrastructure monitoring in the future, basically?
Thank you. Thank you. That's a great question. What you saw in the demo, you know, our industry is full of PowerPoint presentations with chevrons pointing at each other and big architecture diagrams, right? Like you guys all know that, and everyone gets really jaded by that. That was one of the reasons to bring Omri on to show you exactly what we do in the product. What you saw in the product today, is a combination of, like, you know, ultimately your customer, what they want to solve is solve the problems of their customers. In this case, if you are an e-commerce customer, e-commerce client, you want to solve the problem of your customers who are trying to check out, buy furniture, and so on. You're not thinking, like, you know, at a business level, whether it's an infrastructure problem or a code problem or a user problem or some other issue with something else. So what you saw in all of this was actually like maybe 6 or 7 or 8 different product categories that have been created within observability, where different people put together like different individual tools that you run and so on, all in one single pane of glass, which actually is not like an architecture diagram, but things that work seamlessly from end to end, allowing you to troubleshoot a problem much, much, much faster than looking through one thing and then looking through another thing, then looking through another thing. Think of it like a pivot table in an Excel worksheet, which I'm sure everyone here understands, and being able to drill down, drill up, drill down, filter, et cetera, as opposed to looking in 50 different places to try and figure out what's going on. That is the beauty and power of what you saw today. And that experience is extremely difficult or impossible, I would venture to say, to build with individual open source type of products. Hope that answers the question.
Okay, great. Thank you. We'll take another in-person. Fisher, Catherine.
Amit, this is a question for you because you've been at Datadog for a while. And I was wondering, just the pace of innovation continues to accelerate. And I'd love your view on organizationally how you've been able to drive that. Is it you've changed the structure of the organization in terms of who reports to whom, or is it something where the more users you just have more places where you have problems to solve? Any perspective on that would be great. Thanks.
Yeah, we learned this lesson very early on at Datadog. When we give you some background, probably not a lot of people know. When we were a very small company, we just started out, we were like 10, 15 people in the company, total people in the company, maybe 10, 15 people. We were trying to do more integrations, right? Like we were trying to do more infrastructure integrations. And the same engineers, the same product managers that were working on many features were working on these integrations as well. So there was always like this struggle between, hey, what should I work on first and what should I work on next? And we learned from that experience that the only way to grow into all these adjacent areas is by cell division. We keep dividing. So today, to give you a sense, and this is not MNPI. Today, to give you a sense, we have about like 120, 130 product managers alone, which are all backed by engineering teams, pods of engineering teams that each work with these product managers. Now, each of these product managers has a different area of focus. Like for example, cloud cost management, different product team. We spin it out. We don't say, okay, you're going to do double duty on cloud cost management and infrastructure monitoring. We say, okay, Kayla, your job is cloud cost management. Go research it, talk to customers, figure out what exactly they want to do, and then bring it back into the product and build it with the engineering team that's assigned and works just on this. So that's been like, it's all common sense, but that's been our way to continually expand. And we always look for opportunities in adjacent areas. We don't venture out like completely left field into a completely new foreign area that has no adjacency, that we cannot provide any differentiation in, that has nothing to do with our core strengths. We always look at adjacent areas. Like Olivia was talking earlier and David was talking earlier. It's like security because it's right adjacent to observability. Cloud cost management because we also do cloud observability, and joining that data brings our customers additional value. So that's how we kind of think about it.
Great. Thank you, Amit. I'm going to read a question from our webcast audience. It's from Kingsley Crane at Canaccord Genuity. A question about cloud cost management. How are you communicating the value prop of the cloud cost management offering to buyers? Is it most useful to deploy across all cloud hosts, or would it be feasible to apply to a few target hosts?
Well, if you ask my biased opinion, you would deploy it everywhere all at once. The answer here is more nuanced. Like, cloud cost management for Datadog, the value proposition for the customers is like the cloud cost management. There have been lots of tools, cottage industry of things that have come about in this area. The value proposition that Datadog provides, a true differentiation, is not just in the ability to attribute costs and do, activity-based costing and this and that to figure out who gets to get the blame for the cost, but to really be able to take action on these costs, action in real ways where developers can act on it and save money immediately by doing something. So that is the value proposition of our product, right? Like that allows you to look at cost data and marry it to observability data to go down to the level of the container, the host, the whatever that is the single biggest contributor to the cost by marrying these two things together. Now, you may have a small environment where you're just monitoring a very small thing and you look at the cost of that one thing, and you could use our cloud cost management for that. So you could get started really small, or you could have a massive environment with hundreds of thousands of hosts and various different thousands of applications, millions of microservices, containers, et cetera, and you could derive a lot of value in those type of organizations as well. Ultimately, what this product provides is the ability for a developer or an operations engineer, for them to have direct control over agency over the things that they control and understand their costs, as opposed to giving aggregated views that are mostly relevant to finance teams.
Great, thank you. Let's do another in-person question, Fisher.
This is Peter Weed from Bernstein. Super impressive, the detail on product management cells that you have. The thing that's come to mind as I see the exploding portfolio of opportunity, not just within APM, but across the organization, is how do we not overwhelm customers with choice, right? Particularly new customers as they're getting going, and how do you help provide direction and a thread among everything that's going on so that we don't wander into an environment where customers actually almost stop adopting because they're overwhelmed with what they can do and they don't have a common path?
That's an excellent question. And this is an important part of our DNA. Like the way we look at each different product, whether it's real user monitoring, cloud cost management, et cetera, we think of each product as standing on their own and being compelling products for customers on their own as well, if they're not adopting everything else from Datadog. When you look at all of our cloud adoption journey that Yuka talks about, or the numbers we present there, you see an adoption curve where customers are adding more and more products. When we go and sell to customers, we don't compel them to buy an entire solution with 20, 30 products, like the way traditional enterprise software sales work, right? Like where you go and say, hey, here's like 30 things. You need to buy all 30 SKUs in order for you to get value. You can start your journey wherever you want with Datadog. And you can have other things in your ecosystem where you have products from other vendors, things that you already bought from other places, without it diminishing the value that Datadog gives. Of course, our hope is that we can show you by connecting these things together, by adding more things, you get incremental value that you would not get from just...
We'll take another in-person question.
With APM, the market's seen multiple generations of technologies come and go. How would you characterize your structural advantage that could ensure the longevity? Maybe it's related to microservices, that is the pivot. Maybe it's something else. And secondly, I was curious to get your thoughts. When you look at the market and look at customers that have deployed legacy APM or looking at new solutions, what are the problems that they've faced that you're uniquely qualified to solve for them that others cannot? Thank you so much.
Yeah, one of the things that you saw in the demo, one of the things that you saw Omri do so expertly that I could never be able to do, is how seamlessly we can pivot from one view. Like when you think of, let me step back. When you think of application performance monitoring, some of these things are categories created by vendors and this and that. Like ultimately, what do customers want? They want health and they want their applications to be performant, available for their customers, right? Like that's what they want. Now, in the past, the way the world was organized, the way the world organized itself was siloed teams of network engineers, DBAs, developers, operations people, so on and so forth, each with their own set of tooling, right? Like each with their own set of tooling. So a ticket would make the rounds from one team to the next team, to the next team, to the next team. Now, as we move into the cloud, many of these silos are breaking and teams are reorganizing into single teams that have to look at every facet to see where the problem is. And application performance monitoring today, at least the way we see it with our customers, it's a process of elimination on one hand, where you are looking at data in various different ways. You're collecting data from your infrastructure, from your application, from your logs, from front ends, and so on and so forth. And you are doing a process of elimination by starting at one end, no matter which end you start at, and getting to the other end to figure out like where the problem resides. So that's one way to think about it. To get to a root cause of a problem as quickly as possible, the interconnectivity between these things can't just be a PowerPoint with chevrons pointing at each other. It needs to be a tightly integrated data model where everything allows users to right-click on things and drill down and drill up and move from one part of the product to another. So that's one key differentiation that Datadog provides. The other one is the more data you collect from all of these different areas, the better you get at predicting and understanding problems before they occur. Because when you look at modern environments and large-scale applications, typically problems start out with like a little innocuous-looking thing that happens in one corner, and then it spreads out, and then there's cascading catastrophic failure everywhere. So the fact that we gather all of these things suddenly gives us the ability to use, like Omri was saying, non-deterministic ways to figure out, hey, this is where the problem's happening, and maybe address it before anyone else can. And that is also differentiation that comes from bringing all this data in one place.
Great, thanks, Amit. I'm going to take a question from the webcast audience. It looks like the cloud skill shortage is becoming more evident. So how do you deal with it while Datadog grows? How does the management team see it? And will turning it into net positive opportunities be possible through high productivity from new products that can ease the pains of skill shortage?
Trying to digest the question.
I know. I think cloud skill shortage at the customers.
Oh, yes. Look, our products provide customers the ability, ultimately, as Olivia was saying earlier, our products allow customers to improve productivity of their engineers. The ways we improve this productivity is by making our products simple to use, easy to deploy, easy to adopt. This is a part of our MO internally, right? Making products easy to deploy, adopt, use, grow into. And that directly ties into the skills shortage. Because if the products are simpler, easier to deploy, you can have people ramp up on these products much faster without requiring a PhD in understanding what observables, what they're used for, etc.
Okay, let's do another in-person question. Can you raise your hands, please? Mr. Kamal?
Thank you. Camille Milchark from William Blair. I want to follow up on pricing. You're accelerating the pace of new product introductions, and if I look at your website today, I counted 18 modules on the pricing page. How do you think about the pricing strategy evolving long term? Do you think things like AI functionality could provide an opportunity to raise prices over time? And on the other side, where do you see the biggest threats from commoditization and competition on price?
Look, we think along a completely different axes when we're thinking about pricing products, etc., which is mostly around value we provide to the customers and giving them the ability to choose how much of our products they use. So when you look at all of our pricing, it's all based on customers' ability to make the choice of using certain products and other products. So when you look at all of these, I could have very easily bundled it all into one big gigantic package, which would go back to the other speaker's original question, which was like, how do you deal with the complexity of so many different products and so on and so forth, which what you see provides customers the ability to start their journey with Datadog wherever they choose, and then grow into other things if we do indeed provide compelling solutions in all those other adjacent areas. And it's on us to show differentiation and for customers to grow into those, as opposed to a gigantic bundle that shoved down your throat and so on.
Thank you. Another in-person?
Thank you for taking the question. Datadog's always been sort of right at the leading edge, particularly in the core observability space. I wanted to get your take on eBPF and how that might be disruptive to how customers implement observability and potentially make it better across networking, APM, and infrastructure. And where are you on sort of the eBPF movement?
Well, eBPF is, we made a tremendous amount of investment in eBPF ourselves, including a number of different acquisition-related things and internal teams that we built specifically around it. The promise of eBPF is specifically around low friction in deployment and collection of observability data without customers having to instrument their code, do various different things, discovering what is talking to what, and so on and so forth. That is what you will see in Datadog is we don't sell eBPF as a technology. We sell our products that solve a problem for the customers. But what you will see over the next short period of time is it manifesting itself in various different parts of our stack, our agents, and so on, to make where it makes sense easy for customers to collect data without doing extra instrumentation, easy for customers to understand what's talking to what, and so on and so forth. So you will see technologies like eBPF and maybe something else that hasn't even arrived on the scene yet appear in Datadog in a variety of ways, and us incorporating these things, because our goal is always to make it as low friction as possible for customers to deploy and use Datadog and get the most value out of it without having to do a lot of work.
Okay, let's take one more question from the in-person audience. Anybody else have any questions for Amit and Omri? You're all satisfied? Okay, we'll let you go. Thank you very much, Amit and Omri. You can leave the stage.
Thank you, guys. Great questions.